Hello and welcome to my cat. Now, welcome to The Art of Feeling Better, my podcast. And in today's episode, apart from my lovely cat making an appearance, I wanted to talk to you about a topic that's really fresh for me today. And I wanted to capture it while the magic's still there. And that is the topic of triggers and experiencing triggers after shadow work. Now, what I mean by that is, I need to clarify at this point. When I say after you've done shadow work, I do not mean that there is some end point, some completion level where you have finished your shadow work and you get a gold star or a medal, or you become a guru. There is no end to that. Shadow work is something that's it's a constant companion and should be a constant teacher and a constant friend throughout your life. You'll always be able to work with and connect in with and learn from the shadow part of yourself. And what I mean by shadow work isn't as scary as it sounds. It's actually the greatest gift when you learn to lean into it and to embrace it. And all it is shining a light and illuminating the parts of yourself or the thoughts, the behaviors, the actions, the masks, the slight nuances that you tend to repress or to distract yourself from, or at all costs keep hidden because it's just too painful or uncomfortable to look at. Nala agrees. So when I talk about shadow work, that is what I mean. I mean that part of you, that side of yourself, or those sides, those different angles and different elements of yourself that you don't particularly want to look at. That's where the magic lies, and that's the irony. You can spend an entire lifetime trying to escape from these things, trying to find answers and relief and solace in all kinds of different spaces, to do anything you possibly can, but the bit that you actually need to do, and that is step into that space, shine a light, illuminate what's in the darkness, and bring it forward so that you can understand it and learn from it and work on it. And that in turn will help you remove some of the masks, helps you put your boundaries in place. It helps you to understand yourself, your relationship with the world around you, relationship with others, and how you can show up as the best possible version of yourself. How you can feel better, how you can feel good, how you can feel joy and peace and happiness and all the things that you're chasing when you're trying to avoid the solution. Very long-winded way to describe my relationship with the term of shadow work. So on that note, and the topic of today's little conversation is, when you have really done a lot of soul searching and when you have done a deep dive into that space, and especially with my work through Building Mojo School, it's a space that can allow for that to take place in a really gentle and supported way. But regardless, however you choose to engage in this kind of therapeutic work, it can be difficult, right? It can be difficult feeling some feelings. That's why we medicate. That's why we distract ourselves. That's why we mask, because it's difficult. So if you spent some time really soul searching, really diving deep, whether that's with a therapist or whether it's a tool that you found along the way, or just your own personal work on yourself, the next time you experience a trigger relating to that piece of work that you have spent time on yourself with, and maybe you feel like you've really popped a lid off something and you've really leveled up and you have completed a piece of work and you've done something that you think, right, that's cool, I've nailed that bit now, I know exactly what that means, I've shone a light on it, I've brought it out, I know what it is, I've done my work on it, cool, leveling up, I'm moving into a different space. And then at some point in your future you experience a trigger that reminds you of that space, that time, that place. It brings forward all of those old behavior patterns. It brings forward all of those saboteur thoughts that are in there just lurking. And it feels like a big test, right? It feels like you've done this piece of work, but you have to be tested to make sure you really have got it. And that's what I have experienced. I've been experiencing this actually for a good few years now. The deeper I go and the more of this kind of work I do, the more that comes up, I guess, to kind of make sure that I am learning and I am growing, I'm developing and making better choices, making wiser decisions. For me, it's about putting better boundaries in place. and taking a pause and listening to my own inner intuition before I make a leap into the people-pleasing space, which always ends in burnout, by the way, always. So this morning I experienced quite a big trigger, and I wanted to share it with you because I thought it might help if any of you guys out there are kind of on that journey yourselves. And also just to let you know that even people who are leading communities like myself, people who are in that coaching space or that therapeutic space, we're all on the same journey, right? We're all in the same storm, just not in the same boat. So even, someone like myself who spent a lifetime developing tools and strategies and coaching people and supporting people through that work and doing my own, it's still something that comes up time and time again, and it always will forever. That's just the nature of being human, right? So it's important for me to share some of my stuff when it comes up and remain in that kind of authentic space myself. So what happened to me this morning, and it's happened a few times over the last few years, and I feel like I've been learning and growing the whole time, and there's been several recurring characters that have come into my space that kind of are representative of some of my old childhood wounds. And every time I experience that, it gives me another opportunity, right? So I'm really grateful. There's another opportunity for me to learn and grow and pull some wisdom out of these situations and these recurring characters. So it's all good. It doesn't feel it at the time. It doesn't feel very good at all. But eventually you think, okay, that's it, another little piece of the jigsaw puzzle, another little pivot, or another different decision that I could make, and giving me all these opportunities. So I've been in this space now for a few years of real intense growth and learning, and had some really challenging times and challenging situations to navigate. And upon reflection, I'm looking back and thinking, gosh, I'm actually really, really proud of myself for some of the choices that I've made. Even when sometimes I'll make a similar choice to the past and go back into a loop, it was still something I needed to do because I hadn't quite sussed that part of me out yet. And a lot of the work I've done for many, many years has been around the topic of self-worth. And I talk about this a lot in Mojo School. And I talk about the fact that self-worth and self-esteem are two different things. And someone can be very, very confident and can actually value themselves in one way, but not in others. And it's your language and your behavior that shows those things up. And that's why you have to dive deep. And that's why you have to do the shadow work, because you need to shine a light on some of those hidden bits or things that get overlooked or missed. You have to check all your blind spots. So it's been a real pattern for me, a real recurring theme around lack and around always having to work harder and be better and do more and never quite being good enough, and keeping myself in that space where it doesn't really matter how hard I work. I can do superhuman feats of work, and I've, my 20s were all about that. She's a superhero. I don't know how she does it. Humans aren't meant to do that kind of level of work and put themselves under that level of stress. And I can tell you now, there was no award, there was no medal, no certificate for those kind of behaviors, just a couple of hospital visits. So there's been a lot of learning in that space of how much can you possibly work before you achieve that level of validation or acceptance or love or whatever else it is that you're really chasing. And you can't do that in that way, because it never happens, and you get into that perpetuating loop of low self-worth, because no matter what you do, you still mustn't be working hard enough. So it's taken a lot of work to move out of that space, and even to the point that I got myself in an industry that was very famous for that. And looking back now, I think, wow, my whole life has been a kind of journey towards this point now. And working in the creative industry, which, as you will know, if you followed my journey, I spent 25 years working in the fashion and beauty and media industry, and I loved my job. I loved the artistry. Yeah, I loved everything about it. But one of the significant factors in the way I ran my particular business, and I'm not really talking about the salons here, because I had a couple of salons at one point, and that was different again. I'm talking more about my own personal artistry and my freelance work, and the work that led me to New York Fashion Week, London Fashion Week, all of the amazing photo shoots I've done, all of the cover shoots I've done, even before that, for 10 years when I was a professional model, all of that work as well, those kind of things, freelance work as a creative. It was the perfect environment for me to set myself up for never quite being enough, and for not valuing myself at all. And there's a very famous, and those of you who are in this industry and similar, if you're a photographer, or lots of different people in the creative industry find the same thing. it's considered more a hobby, right, than a career for starters, which makes it very difficult to build that credibility because there is just an assumption that you're doing it for fun, for the joy of being creative. And you never can actually make a good career out of it, and certainly not a well-paying career. And there is also the concept of what's in my industry, in the fashion industry, called TFP, or TF, time for prints, which means you will all give your time. The photographer gives their time, the model gives their time, the artist gives their time. And everybody gets a beautiful print for their portfolio, right? Really good concept, and it's great, and it's a really good way to start off in the industry and to make your way in the industry. And I always valued that for great experiences and for networking and for meeting people and for building my portfolio, right, and getting good things. But the flip side and the dark, toxic side of that was it lined me up beautifully to have a lot of experiences where my time wasn't valued. My time, my skill, I was really, really good at my job, was not valued. And I got taken advantage of incredibly, both working in front of the camera and behind the camera. Although ironically, in front of the camera, I did end up getting quite decent pay as a model eventually, less so as an artist, which is also an interesting thing to think about. But this whole concept, and it goes on a lot now, and to the point that I'm connected in with some really great organizations who do campaign work against free work, for freelance, specifically for freelancers, trying to make sure skill level and time is valued, as it is in any other profession. You wouldn't go to a lawyer or an accountant or someone who sells luxury cars, or someone who sells real estate, or somebody who has what would be considered a professional profession, and ask them to can you just do the job for me? You're really, really good at what you do. Can you just do it for free for me? And I'll tell everyone that you're good, and it'll be word of mouth, and you'll get loads of business from it. It doesn't happen, does it? Because no, I've trained for this amount of time, and this is my job, and this is my hourly rate, and this is what I charge, and that's the service. And you never even expect anything other than that. You know that you're going to pay for a service, right? So for other skilled people in the creative industry who've spent 4, 5, 6, 7 years, sometimes as long as it takes to become a doctor, to get a PhD, to become a lawyer, the level of training is the same. Just because we've got pink hair in the corner with tattoos and dress a bit differently, the credibility is not quite there. But that same level of work and training to be expected to work for free. So for me, it was a beautiful storm of being able to hit my creativity buttons and be in a creative industry and do what I've always wanted to do. From an early age, I wanted to be in that industry. I wanted to do special effects and creative media, makeup and hair and styling, and work with behind the scenes of special effects movies. I was really interested in casualty makeup and really sort of sci-fi special effects stuff was where I wanted to go when I started to train as an artist. Having babies meant that wasn't appropriate, so I went into fashion and beauty and weddings and things that were a bit easier to manage with a family and not to have to travel so much. So, but the whole industry was based around this, you need to climb up the ladder and you have to work for free. You have to work for free, especially at the beginning, because you need to get decent quality images in your portfolio, whether you're a model, whether you're hair, makeup, both, and sometimes when you're photographers as well. So there's that whole concept that you are all going to agree to do that, and then everybody gets the benefit of it. And it works well in theory, but there are so many sharks out there, and there are so many people that will take advantage of that without even blinking an eye. Sometimes without even knowing they're taking advantage, but quite often in that industry, fully knowing they're taking advantage and actively taking advantage and finding the very high skill level or finding some really good quality work and exploiting it. And making lots of money themselves or getting some other kind of benefit themselves while exploiting the other artists. And I fell into this trap for years and years and years and years. Because I loved the creativity and I loved being part of a team. I loved being part of something that would produce these wonderful pieces of work. I liked the collaborative space. I loved what I did. I liked to travel. So that for me, I made an excuse there and said, well, it's okay because I like that bit. I was really good at what I did, and I knew I was good at what I did as well. So it gave me a boost to know that I was producing really high quality work and I was getting complimented on my work. But it also allowed little Jane, little 11-year-old Jane, little wounded inner child Jane, who had this cripplingly low self-worth and knew that whatever she did was never going to be good enough, and she had to keep going and keep going and keep working harder in order to be accepted, in order to be loved, in order to be validated and valued. That part of me found this brilliant way to keep myself locked in this loop for 20 odd 30 years maybe, because I could keep staying in this industry where people would tell me that they valued me and they loved my work, and that I could be part of something incredible, but not enough to value my time and my expertise and the fact that I had children to feed, and that it was actually very expensive work. The level I was producing should have been at a specific hourly rate. So it allowed my little saboteur to stay locked in this space of always having to prove myself and never being able to actually be chosen, never being able to actually make it to that point of getting decent paid work, because I would always have some predator saying, no budget for that, but if you just do this job for me, I'll open doors for you. You'll be able to prove yourself. You'll be able to prove yourself in the industry, and everybody will see what I can see in you, and everybody can see the skill level that I just picked up on. And I will open doors for you, and I will introduce you to lots of people who might just value you. And so on and so on and so on. And I do all the free work. And I'll do a bit of paid work, a bit of free work, bit more free work, bit of paid work, bit more free work. And the free work would be stacking up because people would say, yeah, I work with Jane, she's great, she's really good to work with, she's really good at what she does, and she'll work for free. So my name was passed around, and I got into all kinds of different spaces and circles, and thrown little bits of budget every now and again, just some expenses and that. And you're really lucky to be getting that. Even to be getting expenses, you should really be paying your own expenses, but we'll help you out, we'll pay a bit of expenses. Meanwhile, they're making incredible amounts of money from the finished product, and their egos are being stroked, and they're looking incredible because of some, other team members working in the background, right? And the point is, it was always me. I was always the problem. And you can never ever put that blame onto anybody else. Not the narcissist, not the predatory people, not the people with the egos, not the big bad wolf or the mean people that take advantage. It is always comes down to you, because you don't value yourself. How on earth is anybody else going to value you until you value yourself? It's not going to happen. So as soon as I learned this in a couple of different parts of my industry, for weddings, for example, as soon as I tripled my fees at one point, because I had a really good coach who said, this is ridiculous, you should be tripling your fees. But people might not like me, and I might not get any work. And I had to do a lot of difficult work on that before I decided, right, I'm going to trust in this, and I'm going to trust in my ability, and I'm going to value myself. And I tripled my fees. And overnight, I got booked up for years in advance, because I was finally valuing myself properly. So, I found it really, really easy then in that space to do that. But in other spaces, I found it really difficult. And it's been an ongoing battle for me, an ongoing thing and an ongoing theme that comes up. And I'm always hyper aware of it when it raises its head, because it's such a big thing for me. So that whole stepping out of that industry, and one of the things that I had got out of that and learned from it, even though towards the end, I was getting paid, some good money for weddings, and some of the other work that I was doing as well. And I felt in a bit of a better place to pick and choose. And I would maybe choose if I wanted to do something creative, and I, started the shows in that way when I was expecting the same. Look, this is a really good concept, I'd love to do it. Does anybody want in? But I'd be very clear and transparent that there wasn't a budget, and that this was the expectation, and this is what everybody would be able to get out of it. And it came from a place of genuine creative collaboration, and not kind of being predatory or taking advantage. And if there was a budget, and we've always done this, Lindy and I have always done it with Art and Soul Tribe, wherever we possibly can, we make sure creatives get paid. We make sure everybody gets paid, especially performers and artists and people that historically are expected to just work for free. We try really hard to make that happen, because we know what it's like, because we're also in that space. So, I'm connected in with a lot of organizations that do that, and that act as kind of the voice for creatives, and that act as buffers for the broken, awful, horrible, toxic industry, making sure that people are actually, understand and can benchmark their hourly rates and their daily rates, and know the kind of thing they should do, and know the pitfalls. And I've done some advisory work on occasions as well with new startups, especially models and makeup artists and stylists, to let them know, the kind of thing they should be charging, and where it would be a good fit, and where it's really useful to do a TFP shoot. Sometimes it is essential, you need to do some, and where it's kind of, look out for this and look out for this and look out for this, right? It's how the old people like me pass on their wisdom. So getting to the point, and this is, and I'm talking about my story, my perspective and my industry, but I think you can apply this to yourself wherever you are in your life. When you've done a piece of work and you've continually done a piece of work and you're starting to recognize the patterns and you're leaning into that space and you're not afraid of your shadow side and the toxic behaviors, and you understand that you're actually the problem, and you've shone that light and you've brought things to the front and you do lots of work, there will always be a point where that comes to rear its head again, right? And there'll be a trigger. And it doesn't matter what space you're in, you'll know that yourself when you've done the work. For me, it was this particular theme, right? This particular thing. So yesterday I had somebody, and I'm not going to name them, I'm not going to give any particular details because they might well be watching this because they're a new person on my social media radar. And if you are watching this, I'm really grateful because you've given me another experience for me to dissect and reflect on. So there's no judgment, and I'm not naming and shaming or calling out. And I'm assuming that this person is kind of in that space themselves. But it was really interesting how I became so triggered by this conversation. So I had somebody reach out to me and ask me something about a piece of software that they were looking at engaging with. And I've got a lot of experience in this. I've been working with this for a little while. So I think I'd commented somewhere on the official space, and this person reached out for some information. And people do that with me all the time. Don't get me wrong. People are always in my inbox for a million different reasons. And part of my ongoing work around that, and this is, for you guys out there, if you're interested in working with me in Mojo School, I've moved out of the space where I'll answer my phone after hours. I will not answer messages in the middle of the night. I'm not giving free therapy out for people when they're in crisis. It's not what I do. I've been there, done that, and it's part of my own learning. So I'm usually really careful with my boundaries in that space as well. I don't usually answer things, but I do get a lot of people asking me for questions, whether it's them trying to get their way in for some sneaky coaching and asking questions about specific things. And I want to help, right? I'm a recovering people pleaser, and I'm a good person, and I'm in the healing industry. But recognizing that there's no such thing as a healer. There's someone who can create space so that the person can do their own healing. And that's where I'm at now. And that's where Mojo School is. So when people come to me for things, I'll try and, I will give them links, and I will give them advice, and I will send them in different spaces and maybe some helplines if they need it, some crisis support. I will, send them to my own platform if I think it's going to be useful for them. I will help wherever I can within my own boundaries, which are now quite good and quite strong. So, as many people as I can pass on some information to, I'm always happy with that. And this person reached out, nothing therapeutic, nothing to do with mental health or anything like that. It was they'd seen me comment on a really, really good element of my work that I've been using. And I've had really, 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 it's changed the business completely, the way I run business. So I was really impressed with it. I'd commented somewhere on their official space to say, thumbs up from me, really endorsing this. It's made a huge difference, really impressed, and would highly recommend. So a couple of people have actually commented and reached out to me and DM'd me from that. Make sure I'm not a bot, and just to say, is that real? Do you actually get a benefit? And I said, yeah, brilliant. Giving them some examples, off we go. So this person did the same thing. I thought, yeah, cool, I don't mind. Bearing in mind here that this is time, right? This is time, and I want you to be really clear for people out there, whether you agree with me or not. It's really important. This time away from your business where you're earning money and you are feeding your family. It's time away from being with your family and being with your children if you're a parent, or being with your friends. It's time away from your own self-care. It's time away from your own personal practices where you experience joy and peace and happiness, maybe your hobbies, a sport, watching your favorite program, having a shower, doing all the things that are important to you in your life, in your parameters. Anytime you engage with anybody at all out there, whether it's someone you know, whether it's a partner, whether it's a family member, whether it's a business associate, whether it's somebody randomly DMing you on your socials, your time is so precious. It's the only commodity that is finite and that you cannot get back. You only have a certain amount of it, and you don't even know how much that is in your own particular lifetime, right? So precious. You have to protect it at all costs because you cannot live a single moment of it ever again. And if you're spending a lot of your time firefighting, answering emails, answering messages with people who aren't interested in what you do, don't really want an equal energy exchange, there is no give and take, they just want something from you, they're going to drain you, or there is some benefit to them but not to you, then you have to really seriously think about those interactions really carefully, because you can make choices every minute of every day of who and what you interact with and you spend your time on. And it's really important, especially for people pleasers out there, to understand that you are not just an unlimited resource for people to draw on. The energy vampires and the mood hoovers, you don't exist solely for them to be able to use you up and spit you out. You are just as important, no more and no less important than everybody else. And you're the only person that can honor that and understand it and behave in that way. So I'm really, really, really kind of good with this now, because it's been a big piece of work for me. And I'm always willing, usually in working hours is my frame of reference, that when I'm happy to give some time, if I'm on a break or in between something, someone reaches out, I'll always try and help them in any way I can, until it starts encroaching on those particular stretchy boundaries, right? So this person asked a normal question that I've had a million times before in different spaces, and I thought, yeah, I got a bit of time, I'm going to respond. So for me, that's a nice, there's the only reason for me to respond is to help that person. I don't know them, never spoken to them before, never come across them before. They're asking me a question that takes up my time, my energy, my bandwidth, takes me away from all the other things that I enjoy to do and that I want to do, and has me focusing my energy and my attention on them for the sole benefit of solving a problem for them. There is absolutely nothing, there's no two-way thing there. But as good people, we make those choices, right? And we decide, yeah, I want to help that person, and I can help that person, so I'm prepared to put X amount of time into doing that, right? And for me, it was, I'm happy to have a quick conversation while I have the time, and I will answer your question, which was, yeah, this is really good platform. I've been using it. I'd highly recommend it. And then there was a follow-up question, which was, how are you using it? What you're doing? So again, a bit more time, having a bit of a chat, explaining that. And then another follow-up question, and I start to think, oof, I'm now encroaching on a boundary here, because I have other things to do, and it's starting to feel like I'm just a resource for somebody else that, you can try it like I did. There's a free trial as well, so try it. That was the kind of where I was going with it. Like, I've given you my answer. What I carried on that conversation. And then the conversation switched to, can we jump on a call? Now, for me, that's a hard line. That's a big boundary. Can we jump on a call? I'm not a salesperson for this organization. I don't make any money or any commission or any kickback. Why would I jump on a call, right? Why would I jump on a call? It's not a work call. It's not a work call for me. It's not an appointment. And that instantly, for me, learning how to do my shadow work, it came up in my body as a feeling, as a sensation of, this doesn't feel right for me. Now, maybe it would feel right for you. There's never any judgment. It might feel completely right for you. You might think, yeah, cool, I'll jump on a call. It'd be nice to meet a new person. For me, it was a big physical boundary cross there, that this person now expects me to stop what I'm doing and jump on a call. There's no run up for that. There's no reason for that. So it felt like, actually, in years gone by, I would have got in the car and gone to meet them because they wanted me to, and they might value me in some way, and someone needs me, and I'm a people pleaser, right? So that would have been something that I'd have done and regretted. So all the work that I've done in my shadow space has led me, if that feeling comes up, you honor it, you look at it, and you do something about it. So for me, it was, thank you for that. I recognize my body is my barometer, is giving me something. That part of the conversation I was happy with, it was fine. It felt like I was going to be of service and help somebody. And I could do that within my remit and my bandwidth and my abilities. And this now feels like it's not in that space, and it feels like a boundary for me. So I politely said, actually, no, that's not going to work for me. It was getting on I think they're in different countries, different time zones. So it was a little bit later than I would normally answer to a message to explain that. So actually, I'm not usually on socials at this time anyway. So I've already kind of crossed a boundary. But I won't be able to jump on a call, but I do have coaching. I have a coaching space. So if you want some of my time, I usually charge for that. So if you want details, I can let you know. And if you want a call and a conversation for your benefit, that's fine. And I worded it very nicely and politely. And the response I got was what triggered me. So it wasn't even that. This was for me, I get it all the time, and I put a boundary in and people usually go away, or people just ignore me then because they're not getting their needs met and they go away. That's absolutely fine. I have it tons of times. And it helps me reinforce that my boundaries were right all along, right? But this particular person, and I'm really grateful for this because it's led to this conversation. It really has made me think again about reinforcing that. They said, and I think the wording I'd used is, I'm not going to be able to jump on a call. I'm already messaging a little bit more than I normally would, and later than I normally would. It's my family time, but I do one-to-one coaching. So if you do want to call, let me know and I'll send you a link. And because I would normally charge for my time if it's above and beyond a quick conversation. And the answer was, I work in the blah, blah industry. We don't charge for time. We build relationships. Now, that might sound like a perfectly normal sentence reply to my message. For me, that was a red rag to a bull. And that was for me the end of the conversation. So I haven't replied. And that person hopefully has got the information they want and they'll be able to carry on with that. But for me, that was an absolute hard line. And that one sentence, which was probably just, a reply to my sentence, just took me back to that industry where I was told time and time again, you shouldn't be charging for your time, dear. You should be building relationships. We don't charge for our time. We build relationships. You are there to do my bidding, and I might offer you something in return if you're good enough, if you're lucky, if you do the right things. And it just took me back to that whole highly toxic industry where I was preyed on and taken advantage of many, many, many times. And it gave me all the feels, and it became a real trigger for me. And I've been processing it ever since, from this morning, like real visceral feelings in my body of indignance and anger and how very dare you? Because I was feeling all those feelings that I should have acknowledged at the time when these things were happening to me in the fashion industry. The expectation that my time is not valuable, that time away from my children, from just sitting and being and existing, my time isn't honoured and respected. And that was a huge big thing for me for many, many, many years that I hadn't seen at the time. But I recognised when I was doing my own therapeutic work that it was so harmful to me. So I think that's why it came up as a big physical response, because I know I'd got myself into situations where I had a lot of harm because of my lack of boundaries. So for me, when I express a boundary, I guess I have that expectation. And again, it's a piece of work for me to do. If I express a boundary, I have an expectation for somebody to immediately understand she's expressing a boundary there. Absolutely fine, not a problem. Thank you for your time is what my expectation would be. Not a challenge to that saying, well, you're wrong, because you shouldn't be valuing your time. You should be giving me all your time because it's how we build relationships. Now, I do get it. And I know that particular industry as well that person's in is very, that's what it's all about. And I guess if it works for you, then brilliant. If it works for you and you have boundaries in other areas, or you can manage that kind of networking space and those environments, then that's brilliant. You're in the right industry, and obviously it works. And I understand the value of building relationships and how, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, and how these brilliant business partnerships and things can be developed and nurtured and maintained. But for me, as my trauma response was so prevalent at that time, the whole people pleasing, I look back and I don't think it was ever as it should have been. And again, from my own doing, it was all me. But I would leak myself out into these spaces, and I would give, and I would give, and I would give, and I would give, and I would give. And very rarely did I receive. So there very rarely was any of the give and take relationship that should come in that space. But in relationships, we're all giving our time. We're all getting something equal. You have to make sure there's an equal exchange. And even in the energy space, when we do treatments and we do therapeutic stuff and Reiki treatments, the whole philosophy, sometimes it isn't monetary. Sometimes it's an equal exchange in another area. But if you're a people pleaser, you will never do that, ever. You will never have that expectation. You will just expect to give, and you don't expect anything in return, because that's what you've come to know, is that you're the person that has to fight fires and to give, and you kind of put those defenses up that actually you're not going to get in return. That's not who you are. You're not the person that gets things. You're the person that gives. So you have to be so careful. You have to be so careful. And that really, really did push some buttons for me this morning. Just that, the way my senses perceived that one simple, probably innocent sentence in my industry. The industry was named, "We don't charge for our time. We build relationships." I felt like I was being called out. I felt like I was being judged. I felt like I shouldn't be valuing my time. I should be doing whatever people wanted so that I could perhaps be chosen one day and I could perhaps have a relationship. I didn't even instigate the conversation or in the market for any conversation. And that particular industry for me is highly, highly lucrative. So I would suggest that actually their time is very much remunerated, and there is definitely an exchange there in that industry because it's so highly paid. So perhaps on the other side of the coin, there's so much financial gain in other areas. There's so much gain that the rest of the time is literally spent schmoozing and whining and dining and chatting and building those relationships. So of course it would seem like that. But I guess you have to be wary in these interactions that if the person on the other side of the conversation is not in that space, then you're just taking, right? There's no equal exchange of any kind of energy, or there's no expectations outlined. So what is the reason for this? Sometimes I get it on LinkedIn, I get it on all my socials. These nurturing conversations. I've had about 5 this week. They feel like nurturing conversations, which I'm all for. Chatting about business and different things, and I'm in the market for that, and I want to talk about my business and some of my opportunities. And then there's an immediate flip of, can I have a call? Can we have a call? And I think, no, again, boundaries, that's not what we're here for. I love having interactions with people where it's really clear at the beginning, probably because of the things I went through when there was a lot of manipulation. There was a little bit undercurrent where people would say one thing and do another. It's been a repeating pattern for me since childhood. But I think now for me, it's really, really valuable to me when somebody's really honest about their intentions, no matter what their intentions are. At least I know, right? And I might be in the market for it, I might not be. But if someone reaches out and says, hi, this is who I am, this is what I need, this is what I'm after, I'm looking for this is what I can offer in return, does it sound good to you? I'm having a conversation with somebody at the moment, a few people, actually there's 3 or 4, that kind of dynamic where neither of us are charging for time. So that feels comfortable, right? Neither of us are charging for time, but we are very open, honest and transparent about why we're here, what we want and what we'd expect in return, because then it's informed, right? It's informed consent. You can decide whether you want to take that relationship forward, that conversation forward. You understand your investment of time and energy and resource, and you make that decision up front, and you think things can change, obviously, but you think, yeah, actually the risk is maybe that will happen, and that's okay, I can take that. If that happens, that's the worst that can happen. But if this happens, it might lead to X, Y, and Z. So for me, it's about that transparency up front and about those clear conversations and those clear expectations, to the point that at the moment, I really don't want to be in a space, and I'm kind of really avoiding and getting very triggered by anything that isn't upfront, honest, transparent, and doesn't feel right. So if I'm having a connection with somebody, my instincts are usually bob on now. And because of the work that I've been doing, my little 11-year-old brain doesn't talk me out of it. My trauma response doesn't leap forward. It shows up somewhere, but I'm really in control of that space, and I can sit and reflect and pause and work out exactly what's going on in my body. What are my thoughts telling me? What is my intuition, my instincts saying to me? And really, I'm leaning into these spaces and these places and people and interactions where everything feels transparent. The energy feels equal exchange. We can both get something and give something from the dynamic and the relationship. And fortunately, because I've mojoed myself for so many years now, I feel like I'm honing that skill, and it's getting better and better every time. And even that interaction this morning was a good example of that I immediately knew where my boundary was being crossed. And rather than taking that on myself and thinking I was the problem, oh, I should have done that, and now that person's, doesn't like what I've said, or there was none of that. There was no people pleasing. There was I was right. That was right. That was kind of giving me the answer that I needed. That wasn't the interaction that was good for me. That was what I needed right now. Years ago, I would have thought it doesn't matter about what I need or what I want. If this person wants something, I have to give it to them no matter what. So food for thought there. I wanted to share that as a live experience as it's happening, because I think it's important to do that. A lot of the work that I've done has been kind of past, I'm sharing a lot of my inner child work and a lot of my healing along the way, and some of the tools that I've built over the years. But there's some real action steps that are happening as we speak, and I'm happy to share those as and when they come up. So I'd love to hear any comments you might have on that, any thoughts. And I'm cool. I can, it doesn't matter whether you think it's an overreaction or whether you can relate and you agree that that's kind of similar for you, whether you think that makes no sense whatsoever. All those things are fine, right? Because it's, your perspective is just as valid as mine. But it would be interesting to see or to hear if you have any similar experiences, if anything's been a trigger for you, especially if you already feel like you've done quite a lot of work on something. Maybe you've had some therapy, or you've done some real deep soul searching, and something just keeps coming up and biting you on the bum, and you're very aware that there's a specific trigger that's cropping up for you. Let me know. Let me know how you're dealing with it and what kind of tools you're using. And my advice, feel some feelings. Sit with it. Accept it. Have some gratitude for whatever the learning is. activate the power of the pause, let the feelings come up, do a bit of reflection and processing, and then behave in a way that helps you and that protects you and your boundaries, because you are super, super important. That's it from me for now. I will see you next time on The Art of Feeling Better. Bye for now.